Hi, and welcome back. So today's topic is really about AI RevOps and kind of how it fits in to the overall picture. So in this video, we're going to give you some quick tips, especially around getting your HubSpot ready for RevOps, a lot of quick wins that you can action during this video. And at the end of the video, we're going to have a bonus. My name's Scott from HubStart. We're focused on implementing the new AI technology and definitely aligning that with RevOps and how that all fits. And my partner here, James.
Yeah, I'm also on the co-founders HubStart, and I'll be focusing on some of the ways that this can then relate into HubSpot and HubSpot methodology and what you do within the platform.
So let's get started. So what is RevOps? So RevOps is really the science of sustainable revenue growth. So, we'd like to focus that this is replicatable, repeatable revenue growth. And here I also talk about how to think about this in terms of computer mentality. It's really ability to optimize KPIs. So this is from a technical point of view. So the idea is that everything we talk about can be related back to, for humans, obviously the repeatable revenue growth, but from an AI speak, that it's always focusing on the objective of optimizing KPIs. So what does RevOps involve? So I just wanted to touch on this. So RevOps is really multifaceted skill. It's not getting into necessarily into the nitty gritties of sales or marketing or customer success, but it's the skill of controlling the data and controlling the orchestration. So a RevOps person is going to need project management skills to help coordinate and roll out information, ability to read accounts, obviously cash flow, P&L, balance sheets, just being able to assure that the financial objectives are aligned with what we're doing on our RevOps. The ability to manipulate and look at data, SQL, OLAP, being able to shape data to really be able to take top level KPIs and drill into the reason and the cause of how information impacts revenue, the ability to express business process modeling and notation, so BPMN, the ability to which is the ability to look, evaluate, and create orchestration, the higher level information that sits above a CRM, the information which connects everything together. More and more common, the ability to understand biopsychology, because as AI comes in, biopsychology is becoming a part of AI, ChatGPT, and other technologies. So it's impacting and can be measured more as a number than historical. Developing G2M strategies, forecasting models, because revenue is based on the future impacts. So impacts that might be linear versus impacts might be compounding or exponential. We need to look at how changing systems will impact in the future. Understanding the scientific approach, simulation and data. So this is getting into assumptions, working on complex A/B testing and creating simulations, which now can be done using different AI models, prompt engineering, which is going to be a very, more and more common especially in HubSpot and any kind of markets that are out there, and process mining, which is looking at how information flows from an event perspective, from a decision perspective through a system. So RevOps encompasses a lot of skills, and as a business, this could be one person, could be many people that are developing your RevOps. So when is RevOps applied? So RevOps is applied at 2 stages. So we normally focus on the growth stage. So at the growth stage, you have your everything ready. You have your numbers captured. You have your buyer's journey in place. You have all your information set up. You have your CRM set up to capture data and information. So now it's about refining and executing. But but the RevOps can also be used in the earlier stage. So the RevOps gives you the framework of where you need to be in the future, what you should be measuring, what you should be looking at, where you need to experiment to be able to create a stable CRM, a stable process, which is going to lead you to that growth stage. So in general, we have our RevOps model. First, we start with the business model. The business model is really about, understanding what's your customer problem, what are your KPIs, your operational focus, and how that kind of focuses on your sales, marketing, and customer success. Your GTM strategy, which is looking at, where you're going to convince your buyers to sell, and what tactics you're going to use, like the buyer journey, and what is going to be the top of your funnel, targeting your addressable markets, your customer profiles, competitor analysis, and all those strategies. The growth model and the data model, so mapping the current processes in the bow tie model, which we'll get into, and the flywheel, in terms of evaluating how they'll grow and continue to grow. So this is really saying, how does everything connect together? How is the orchestration in your company going to work? And where am I going to get the data from? So where am I going to feed the data so I understand how the business is going to operate? And then the mass model, which is looking at identifying and forecasting and evaluating impact. So once you're able to understand how your business operates from a numerical point of view, from a process point of view, you're able to create forecast. And the final stage in the methodology would talk about simulation and experimentation, which is looking at existing data and then going into things like AI models and forecast models to really see the what if I do X, what is going to be the outcome on my revenue. So it's the ability to simulate before doing, and this empowers businesses to remove the guesswork out of what will happen. So what we need to do is we need to look at collecting the aggregate information in your bow tie model. So this is the objective of RevOps, is in a way to place it in a process that can be measured and look at from awareness to expansion. In a lot of business, more and more so, sales are done more in the customer success side. So the customer success is on selling, upselling, cross-selling, whatever you want to talk about, but a lot, and also creating referrals, but a lot of the sales efforts are now shifting to the customer success team. So the end of the funnel, the awareness and education, this is kind of your traditional, but sometimes you're able to create a low resistance point to get people into the funnel to be able to on-sell them. So the objective here is to measure each of the stages, the conversion rates, the volume, the timing, to understand how that's going to lead to further revenue development. So here's a better summary of what I was discussing when we talk about each stage. So we can see that we go from awareness, education, selection, onboarding, achievement, recurring impact. Now, every company kind of has their own naming, and this doesn't necessarily fit. So we generally are trying to standardize the metrics from CR1 to CR7 as the main conversion rates. And now we're trying to look at the T1 to T7, and V1 is the volume metric. So how many people are coming at each stage. So you can see in this diagram, when we're talking about the end of the funnel, we're actually talking about reusing that customer over and over again to keep the upsell and cross-sell happening here. So this is kind of what we're talking about, and understanding if we're reusing a customer, we can understand the impact. So what is the effort of getting a person into the funnel, getting them onboarded, and what is the impact of reselling to them? So this is all the calculations which are needed. So when we consider something like the HubSpot flywheel model, we talk about force and friction. So these are items which may fit into your bow tie model, but they're also items which might not necessarily fit. So we need to consider force and friction. And force and friction is about acceleration. It's not about linear growth. It's about accelerating. What can you do in your business that's going to accelerate the sales cycle, accelerate the revenue to achieve revenue, or the friction? What is working against you? So what is pushing against you? What is creating that negative impact within your business as well? So having all those information, when we're starting to understand where our metrics fit in, where our force and friction fit in, now it's about quantifying it. So quantifying it is normally done through RevOps KPIs. So setting your top level KPIs, which is probably more than just revenue. It could be customer satisfaction. It could be other metrics. I can't think of any right now, but the idea is to have your top level metrics set, because you're going to want to align your marketing, sales, and customer success teams to the RevOps KPIs. So where do you want these people focusing? So with the KPIs, we're talking about using the KPIs as a way of ensuring everyone's working in the same direction, that information passed on between the different teams is aligned, that what is acceptable and what is not acceptable for each of those teams is well defined in terms of the KPIs which you're measuring. So it's many companies, well, some companies may be ready for this. If you're in the growth stage, you'll be ready for creating your core metrics, setting up your template. If you're not quite in this stage, this is an opportunity to work out what can you measure now. And when we talk about measuring, we're talking about measuring in a stable way. So can you measure these in a repeatable way? So if your lead generation or your marketing is not consistent, if it's based purely on referrals, you haven't got a strong funnel, then these metrics are going to be messy. They're not going to be stable numbers. So that probably indicates that you're not in the growth stage. You're in the pre-growth stage, which means you're still in the experimental phase of trying to get your metrics stable, which is great because you can experiment, keep working on your funnels until you get to the point of stability. Once you get to that point, or even before that point, measuring these things will allow you to evaluate how changes made either within your sales, marketing, customer success, operational, functional implementation of AI will impact your overall business. So you're not guessing and you're not just spending money into a black hole. You're trying to create these measurements which relates to your revenue, which now you can measure what should I do next? What should I prioritize? And how will that impact my business? Not necessarily today, but in the future. So impacts can be different. So impacts in early stages might be linear growth, but impacts on later stages in your customer success, in referrals, might have a compounding growth. So you need to think about what metrics can be changed, how that's going to affect revenue, and how that affects revenue in the future. So you can look at your business in a very mathematical way, which is where the mathematical model fits in. So I'm going to hand it over to James to go over some things that you can look at in HubSpot straight away.
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, the first thing you want to look at is your company ready? And this isn't necessarily going into the details around what you actually input into HubSpot, like because we're first talking about even knowing your customer problems and what the transformation is that you're trying to achieve for your prospects. And that's something that you can define in HubSpot in your buyer personas, but we find it's good to take a step back and just to document and define those in advance. and really think about those carefully before you then start building out a process within HubSpot to get people to that and through that funnel. In terms of that funnel, then, is the buyer journey well defined? So that's to say, do you have a clear process within HubSpot across marketing, sales, and success that shows the different steps that someone needs to go through within your process, and is that process optimal? So that would be thinking about, say, the stages of your sales pipeline, for instance. It could be talking about the lead scoring metrics that you consider in your marketing phase. But looking at those and making sure that they're based around the buyer's actions rather than your internal team's actions. So, for instance, like what are the actual concrete things that you know that a customer or a prospect needs to get through for them to reach the next stage of your sales process? And you could call those, what we'd call those, like exit criteria, and those shouldn't be like a sales rep in-house sending a proposal. It should be something like someone responding positively to something that you're proposing to them, something that's then going to allow you to then take them to the next stage of trying to close their first or a subsequent sales purchase. So then, is the path in your HubSpot clear at each stage for each type of buyer? So that's going back to those personas again. So thinking about what each persona's problems are and what the transformation is from those problems, and making sure that any content that marketing is creating and sending out, any collateral that sales are using around the solution of that problem is well aligned, and also making sure that the customer success team are looking for opportunities to upsell them based on what we know normally happens with that kind of persona's journey when they actually become a customer. So it's looking at those aspects, and also looking at the alignment between different teams as well. So making sure that, for instance, the marketing team understand what they need to be preparing as someone qualified, what is a qualified lead that sales are then going to be able to handle, and then also from a sales to customer success side, like what needs to happen within the sales process to make sure that someone is bought in, that they are clear on what they're getting and what the solution that's proposed is really what they're going to get, so that there is no friction when that person actually goes into the onboarding and the reality of being your customer. So that alignment between the different teams, going back to those overall RevOps KPI goals that Scott was mentioning on the previous slide, those are extremely important to keep that process as low in negative friction as possible. If you make a change to any stage of the process, can you measure the impact, and is there a clear dashboard for the conversion metrics? I sort of see those, they're kind of going between each other there. So you want to make sure that you have clear reporting within HubSpot of your conversion through the funnel, and that's not just stages of your deal pipeline in sales, that's your overall funnel from those initial awareness stages all the way through to customer success. And because if you have clear conversion metrics that you can look and report on easily within HubSpot, then you can sort of look at those, and if you do make changes, see whether those are having an impact. So for example, if there is a stage within the sales process that has a high level of friction, and the conversion rate between, say, CR, like one CR stage and another CR stage is very low, then be able to see that in a report, what that is low, identify that it's low, and then when you do make adjustments, seeing if that then has an effect on the conversion rate between that stage and its following stage. And then lastly, if you change something in HubSpot, can you estimate the impact on revenue and perform a cost benefit analysis? So that's sort of going on from that reporting and then looking at it from a future perspective. So thinking, if I do make these changes, can I sort of forecast what impact that's going to have? So if we're looking at, say, increasing volume or reducing time for particular stages in the process, can we try and measure what impact's going to have. Like, for example, if we know that we have the capacity to get X people from stage C to stage D of your process within a period of time, in its current format, because that stage is particularly time consuming for your reps, then we know that if we make this into a process that takes half as long, then we can get twice as many people through that in theory, assuming that cutting that down isn't going to have an impact on the conversion rate metric. So be able to factor that in as well.
Yeah. And that one's interesting because here, not all conversion rates are the same in terms of their impact. Like a 1% increase in one of the earlier metrics may only have a linear impact on revenue, but something maybe in customer success or decreasing your onboarding cycle may have a exponential or a compounding effect. So decreasing time, if you decrease time, let's say it takes 3 months to onboard and you are able to free up your resources to 2 months, you're going to free up yourself. 3 months takes 3, 6, you can do 4 customers if it takes 3 months, but if it takes 2 months, now you can do 6 customers. So you decrease by 1 month, but you actually, over a longer period of time, have it's not a linear growth, it's going to compound your growth over that period of time. So understanding that is a great way to do that cost benefit analysis. What am I changing? And really get down to the dollars of what does that mean for my business.
And you can take that further down the funnel as well. Like if you're onboarding more customers because you're making your onboarding process more seamless and shorter, then there's going to be more customers coming through, more people for the customer success team to on-sell down the road. So you can then think about those more opportunities for them, how that's going to affect their capacity, and the whole compounding effect later down the process.
Exactly. So I just wanted to touch on the AI side. Do you have your AI strategy ready? So this is something that's more and more important now. Have you got your competitor research tools? Like something I like to do is get ChatGPT to act as a difficult buyer or act as a competitor or play devil's advocate. So really trying to work out what are my business's weaknesses before I find them out from customers. So having a strategy there to be able to mock and to keep up to date is a very powerful strategy. So knowing where things align, testing your sales script, testing your playbooks, all those things is a great place to start. Using AI for knowledge extraction, being able to work out where your customer problem, your transformations fit, and how does that fit in the market, and how is that perceived. So really kind of using that as part of your strategy, and then using HubSpot tools, getting into brand voice. Brand voice for me gets into more detail about making sure people are consistent with the way they talk to the customer, and how that information flows between marketing and sales and customer success, that all those people are talking in the same way in terms of the brand that you want to provide. Context remix. So, what is our strategy around the content, using AI generated content versus human content, and content remix about what information you want to come in and reuse over and over again with different channels. How AI is going to support your support team, knowledge base, and source of truth. So all these things are coming into play with all those items we added, but they all get slotted into that process. So companies are already using this, so it's really important to take the model and factor in how these things are used. So I'm seeing some clients even using AI as almost like another salesperson or another marketing person to use as a way of benchmarking, but having the strategy around there to allow it to say, What do we want our AI to do? What do we want it to deliver? Where don't we want the AI to interject? So knowing your boundaries and what's acceptable as part of that strategy. So I want to move into the second phase. So once you are in the growth stage, and I believe this will fit to people in the experimental phase. Once you kind of have your metrics in place, when you have a model that you understand and you believe is working for you, then we normally talk about phase two. We're just getting into the quick wins, the alignment again. So where that alignment does benchmarking, continual growth, and simulation. So I'll just dive into this. So the quick wins is anything which is a required or a must do in any preparation stage. So these are things they're not going to take a lot of effort and things that you should just do. So when we think about the flywheel model, we're talking about force and friction. So these are things that you'd say it's just going to take a short period of time to do. We don't necessarily know the impact, but we should do it anyway. So they could be automatic lead scoring, smart email personalizations, predictive analysis, chatbots for customer support, content optimization. So even if you don't necessarily can measure this, that the effort outweighs the benefit. So it's just something you should do. So that's going to be included in your metrics. The alignment. So once you do have that model, then the alignment is putting in your, as I said, the KPI measurement, setting up the KPIs. Setting up KPIs is more than just a static number. KPIs indicate what's acceptable and what's not acceptable. And Amazon is a company which you may like or dislike their KPIs, but the model of being able to action things when people don't perform and action things when people do perform, give it a framework that people can work under and give it a framework which makes a very predictable outcome. And obviously you don't have to use Amazon's KPIs, but what is acceptable for your company? And this allows for corrective behavior and the actions to be taken at any stage. The other alignment is the internal process, SLAs, SOPs, the standard documentation that needs to be in there. So if you don't have your growth model in place, then these documents are generally going to be very light documents. If you have your processes more established, then these will be more detailed and in-depth processes. Reward framework. So the humans and systems need to know what is working, what's not working, how to correct, and when to escalate. And your AI alignment, which is starting to look at AI in the sense of across the teams as well. So more than individual tools, but as an orchestration. The benchmarking is very important. So it's very hard to know improvements without benchmarking. So your current situation, the current metrics. So we already talked about the KPIs and the top level metrics, but there'll also be additional metrics in there that you'll want to measure in terms of the market space, how your operations are performing, very specific sales things that you want to dig down on. And these benchmarks will give you the ability to see how your company's performing against the competitor or how you expect to do it. So given those kind of three, I had more than that, but I didn't want to get into these others. So those three are kind of like the foundation. So once you have your growth model, you move on to your next stages, which is setting your alignment ready for your experimentation, for your growth to happen. So those things need to happen. So I'll pass this to James to talk a bit about HubSpot and how these kind of fit into HubSpot.
Yep. So the first thing that you would do, as we mentioned earlier, is about identifying the quick wins. So in terms of doing that in HubSpot, looking at areas where it's obvious that things are falling down. For instance, if you're getting a lot of complaints from your sales team that the leads that are coming through aren't qualified, then that's an area that you could look at initially. But just looking at those things where you can take immediate action without much effort to try and resolve those, where you know there's a real problem and you don't need to do any deep analysis to find that. Then sort of looking at how the teams are working together, if there's any friction in the way they work together. So that's going back a bit to what I was talking about before around the alignment. So looking at the handover between the different teams, looking at how what each team is doing is setting the prospect up for the next team and setting them up for success, and how they're measuring that success and whether those metrics are aligned. So that's all stuff you can do from within HubSpot by looking at the data in there, looking at the processes that are being followed, and looking at the sort of the exit criteria as things move between each team and what information is being collected to get there. So that's all analytics you can do within HubSpot. Then looking at whether you have a QA process, and if not, putting one in place for your teams, and that's covering like the negative, the neutral, the positive, like the corrective behavior. So if people are if marketing is sending through unqualified leads, or sales are promising things that can't be delivered, then putting corrective behavior in place and training people to do the right thing. Escalations, so that would be like where people don't know, if people don't know what to do, whether something is qualified or whether something is a fit or not, then having an escalation process where that can be reviewed across departments, and with metrics being adjusted potentially off the back of that, to reflect what you've learned by discovering these new types of people that don't fit the buckets you thought that they did before. And then of course rewards, like people are hitting their metrics or exceeding their metrics, making sure that they're rewarded for doing so, and that you analyze why they're being successful and how you can replicate that across your team. So there's a few examples for you there about sort of areas that you can track on the positive and in this case the negative side, to help you to build that data.
And I think that's just making sure, right, in HubSpot, making sure your deal flows are set up right, your lifecycle stages are set up right, you're capturing the right lists, and what would you say, that you have tickets or task automation set up so these items are reviewed in a systematic way.
Exactly, yeah. Like you in the concept of the sales pipeline, you'd have like the closed lost reason, the closed won reason, which should be mandatory when a deal exits the pipeline. In terms of the marketing team, it could be like recording disqualification reasons if they do get to sales and then get disqualified, as well as looking at the logic behind the scoring that's got them to the point they're being handed over. So all that data that's being captured
And automated, right?
Yeah,
So
exactly. And lastly, do you have enough metrics today? Like, are you tracking enough different metrics to have a good understanding of the impact of decisions that you make, and to see how well you're actually performing as well? At the very least, that would be, as I mentioned, tracking like your conversion funnel, but also tracking the activities that are happening, the time spent in different stages of the process as an average, and then also looking at those high level metrics in terms of leads generated, revenue attained from new business, revenue attained from existing business, and churn rates and so on.
and most of those are out of the box with HubSpot, right? You just need to hook them up.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you can pull all of these from the HubSpot library pretty much, even if you're on its most basic package. And on the sales analytics, service analytics, you can go deeper on that as well, on Pro and above.
Right.
So hopefully that's all been useful, giving you some new ideas of small concepts. So we've talked before about our AI workshop, which is really something we put together around all the ideas that we've been talking about today, and how they can be applied to your business and achieving your RevOps goals. So this is like a workshop that we do where we take a deep dive into your business, like work out what those quick wins are going to be, what those quick wins are and how they can be implemented, looking at where the friction is within your process, and then looking into those areas of friction to see what areas that you can be improving from there, and how you can improve and where you should focus your time, and be able to see how they're going to impact then and the forecasting of your success against those metrics. So very useful workshop that really touches all those areas and puts you set up for success with a good growth strategy that you can act on.
Excellent. The link will be in the description of this video, and if you like this content, please like and subscribe, and we'll catch you in the next video.
Thanks very much. See you soon.
Thanks. Bye.